So I'm going to turn the case up here. Assuming you've screwed everything down and everything's solid and fit, your motherboard is pretty much ready to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and set up the hard drive. Now my case has 3 front-loading hard drive shells. So what those do is just it holds the hard drive in place and allows me to slide them out if I need to replace a certain drive. So for my case, I install the hard drive into those individual ports. So what you're seeing here is a Western Digital Caviar Black hard drive. It's 1.5 terabytes, which is 1 terabyte is 1,024 gigabytes of data. 1.5 is about a gigabyte and a half. Or I'm sorry, a terabyte and a half, of course. So it's got 7,500 RPM, all that, as I discussed in the hard drive post, or rather my guest blog by Dog Mommy. Awesome post from him, thank you. And I'm just installing the hard drive now. So you want to screw it down. Of course, you don't want to screw them all the way in until you have all 4 secure. So your hard drive there isn't bogged down to one side or rattling on one side. So you screw them all in tightly, solid, and neat feature of the case there lets me pull it. There's a fan on each one. Lets me pull out a dust collector and clean that if I so wish. You notice the red cord sticking out of the back of that. That's the power connection for the fan. So I slide that into the case along its grooves. And it should fit really well. All those stickers there are just stuff that come with all the components you find. They call them badges. Oddly enough. So just zooming in here so you can take a look at the SATA ports. Just below the rightmost sticks of RAM, you see 2 SATA ports, and then they're red along the side there. You can't see the open ports of them, but those red portions there are also more SATA ports. These allow data transfer from your motherboard to your hard drives and CD drives as well. So I'm installing the screws here for the additional hard drive cages. And let's see. Last thing, I'm going to insert the CD drive, which is essentially the same as the hard drive, except you just slide it in from the front, just in the top there, and screw it down. I don't have a Blu-ray drive, it's just a typical CD drive. It's something like $30 at Fry's or Newegg or Tiger Direct, as I've referenced quite a few times. So just like every other component here, 1 screw at a time, but not all the way tight until you have all 4 in. Then, go back and tighten them up. Alright, so now I'm going to take all these power cables, all these cables that control the fans on the back, the top of my case, and each of the cages, and I'm going to put them through these holes so that they are in the back and not in the way of all the other wiring. When I get the power supply in there, those wires are going to take up a lot of space, so I want to try to manage those as best I can. I'll touch on that in a moment. What you're seeing here is the SATA cables, as I was discussing earlier. They come in quite a few varieties, but as I was pointing to the SATA ports there, you just plug in one end. I like to wrap it around the back so that those cables aren't in the way, and plug it into the drives that you feel necessary to plug them into. Of course, that's the CD drive I just plugged that one into, and I skipped ahead plugging in the hard drive. So this is just another fan that I have for the graphics cards. And I sent the wire for that one in the back as well. So right here what you're seeing, this tentacly looking beast, is the power supply. Since I have 2 graphics cards and a pretty powerful hard drive, I went for a 950 watt because I like to upgrade my computer as well. So you fit that. Oftentimes when you find cases, you'll see that the power supply is positioned up at the top. I avoid cases like this. It's just a personal choice. I feel like they, if something were to happen, it would come loose, it might fall down and break some other pieces. I've never heard of that happening, but it's just, something I like to be careful of. So I usually find a case that has a power supply positioned at the bottom. So I'm organizing these cables here just a little bit and pointing out the 8-pin connectors, 6 modular 8-pin connectors used for video cards here. Each of my cards uses 2 of the 6-pin connectors there. So once again, I'm organizing these just a tad. This 8-pin connection is specifically for the CPU. Up here, right at the top of the motherboard, that powers the CPU and also provides power to the fan. So we'll get that plugged in. I usually try to wrap the cords around and keep as much open space available. Excuse me. This connection here is a SATA power connection. These will run into your hard drives and CD drives as well. And that one there, that port, is the 24-pin motherboard power. So that is probably the most important part of your power supply. I'm sliding that into the back, looping it up top, and plugging it into that port right next to the RAM. That white port there, yeah. As you can see, I'm plugging that in. And then the rest of them I'm going to run through the holes in the back so that they can plug into all the fans and keep it organized. So the reason you want to keep all your cables organized is because of airflow. Specifically important if you're overclocking or if your graphics cards run very hot, which they tend to do. You want to keep a very good airflow going in your case, and if a lot of cables are in the way, that can disrupt that. So also, managing your cables well makes it much easier to change things up later if necessary, especially if you're upgrading. So as you can see here, I'm just sliding them all through that hole down there at the bottom so that they can be routed towards the back. And on the extra tied cables there, I have them tucked into that bottom cage so that they're out of the way of every other air intake. And as you can see here, I'm plugging in the power for each of the video cards. 2 for each one. And tucking them in. Now I'm going to rotate the case around here and show you what the back looks like now. And see, it's very clean in the front. You know, plenty of airflow, everything can flow through. I pulled out a twist tie. Those things are your best friends when it comes to cable management. To tie the CPU power cable down up in the front there, and I clipped the end of it so it wouldn't get in the way of fans. So there you go. That is the power to the majority of your case there. Let me flip it around here. As you can see, it is a jumbled mess in the back. So you've got these 3 fan connectors up here that my case has. When you're connecting those, you'll want to use the typical 4-pin connector. You know, just match them up. It's rather simple. Because those 3 are right next to each other, I found one string of those connectors and tied them all to that string. And tried to tuck them in as much as possible. This right here is the SATA power connections for the hard drive and CD drive. Sliding those in. And connecting the rest of the fan controls for the front here. I'll plug in the SATA power connections later on. Now, you may have noticed earlier, when I was plugging in the 24-pin connector to the motherboard for the power, I removed one of the SATA cables and swapped it out for the other one because it had an L-shaped plug there. If your cables, are mismanaged or you feel like you need to change things up, don't be afraid to, just redo it. It's not a big deal at all. And if anything, you'll come out better for it. So that's the rest of the power cables connected there. Just have to connect that one SATA connection to the hard drive and CD drive. So there's the hard drive. The 24-pin connection kind of got in the way there, so I was trying to figure out how best to fit it in there. Looking back, actually, I could have just not tied in or screwed in the cage yet. Just slid it forward so I could more easily connect those power connections. The CD drive is now plugged in. I'm just going over one quick check, and I think we're good to go. So, thank you very much for watching, guys. This has been an instructional video on how to build a computer. I understand it went very fast, but if you have any questions, shoot me an email, send a comment to the page. There you go. Also, I'm not affiliated with Gearbox. I just did a focus test for them once. And thank you very much.